Hey there, Mike Robbins here, coming to you live. It's what's today? May 4th. May the 4th be with you. It's 10:40 a.m. Pacific time. Today I want to talk about staying grounded in the midst of challenges when things are stressful or challenging or hard, which I know they have been for many of us, myself included, at different times over the last few years, especially, but even in recent days and weeks and months. So a couple things. I know whether you're watching live on Facebook or on LinkedIn or on YouTube right now, if you are, feel free to chime in. Let me know where you are, how you are, if you have questions or comments about what I'm talking about. And if you're watching this video after the fact, you can also chime in on the comments. I take a look after usually and happy to respond. So the last time I came live 2 weeks ago, I believe, I had tested positive for COVID and was still in my isolation period here in my office where I ended up living for 10 days. I'm fine. I feel good, on the other side of it. It ultimately wasn't all that bad for me, thankfully. I didn't get really sick. I mean, the first few days I've had you know, what felt like a pretty bad cold. But then it was fine. I just kept testing positive for the full 10 days and nobody else in my family got it. So I stayed isolated. That was actually the hardest part, was the isolation and then the mental, emotional challenge of it. But it's gotten me thinking about a bunch of things as I've also been navigating some different stress and challenge in our family, with work, with life, with just the state of the world. And I want to touch on and talk about 5 specific things that I think we can do to more effectively stay grounded in the midst of challenges, in the midst of stress, in the midst of uncertainty, which I know a lot of us continue to deal with in a pretty intense way. And especially on the heels of all we've been through over the last couple of years, I've noticed my own ability to stay grounded in the midst of stress and challenge has actually gotten worse to some degree, not necessarily better, in a way that's been humbling and at times painful, but I think important for me to take a look at. So again, I have some compassion for myself, which we'll talk about, but I think it's important for us to look at, well, what can we do? So the first thing I think is important for us to do when things are challenging or stressful or difficult is to be real about how we feel with ourselves primarily, but also maybe with some of the people around us. So to really get in touch with, how am I actually feeling? What's going on for me mentally, emotionally? And sometimes it's hard to know. And oftentimes for me, it's a myriad of different emotions, some of which I don't particularly like, feeling helpless or powerless, as I often do, and especially did when I got COVID, but other things, feeling, sad or angry or ashamed or embarrassed or scared or whatever those more negative emotions I tend to, and I think a lot of us tend to avoid them, deny them, pretend like they're not really there, don't want to fully feel them or surrender to them because they seem negative or challenging or uncomfortable. But the reality is, we can't selectively mute emotions. So if we say, I'm not going to feel scared, or I'm not going to feel sad, or I'm not going to feel powerless, or I'm not going to feel shame, or I'm not going to feel fear, anger, jealousy, whatever it is, that actually limits our ability to fully experience joy and happiness and gratitude and love, the emotions that we want to experience. So it's about having more emotional space. And it's emotional intelligence, but it's more emotional capacity, I would say. So, and again, look, it can be hard because a lot of people are stressed out, right? People in our homes, that we work with. So it's not that we want to dump our stuff on other people, but can we get in touch with how we really feel? Can we journal about it? Can we talk about it with a friend, a spouse, a coworker, a counselor, a therapist, a coach, someone? Can we really get in touch with and express it? I was together last night with a couple of good friends of mine. We got together to watch the Warriors Grizzlies NBA playoff game. Warriors lost, which was a bummer, and it was a pretty rough game. But before we got together and we had a meal and we sat around, and these are 3 men that I really love and trust, and we just opened up and shared about how we were really feeling, what was going on. And I actually really appreciated their intention and their listening, and I broke down and cried about some of the painful stuff that I'm dealing with right now in life. And it just felt so good to be witnessed like that and to be held like that emotionally and just to like, whew. Like I knew I was feeling some of that and carrying it, but just to be able to express it. So there's different ways for us to get in touch with how we feel and to really feel it. And then ideally to appropriately and in a healthy way express it. If we don't do that, it'll seep out in different ways. We'll bark at the people we love the closest. We'll flip people off in traffic. We'll do things and say things that we regret. So we want to proactively and authentically really feel what we're feeling. The second thing is important for us to remember is to not overreact. Now, anyone who knows me well knows this is one of those pot calling the kettle black things or teaching best what you most need to learn things, because this is not my forte. I tend to overreact to things. I'm a passionate person. I react in the moment. And I actually have found my overreactions have been sometimes more pronounced over the last, weeks, months, a couple of years here. But I did one of these videos a few months ago. And the title of it was Don't Freak Out. And it came from actually hearing Brene Brown say something in her book, Atlas of the Heart, her most recent book. She talks about her tendency to freak out, which I can relate to. And she's like, there's two questions that I ask myself, she said, whenever I might freak out. First is, do I have enough information to freak out? The answer to that is often no. And the second question is, will freaking out help the situation? And the answer to that is almost always no. So do I have enough information to actually freak out, and will freaking out actually help the situation? No. So if we can practice breathing, keeping things in perspective to whatever degree we can, not overreacting in the moment. Again, I'm not saying don't be real. I'm not saying don't speak up. No, but it's like there's a difference between being real about how we feel and overreacting. The third thing that we can do is remember, and this is part of not overreacting, but remember the beautiful and powerful notion of this too shall pass. This too shall pass, whatever you're experiencing right now. If things are going phenomenally well and you are like in such an awesome mental, emotional, personal, practical, professional space, fantastic. It's not going to last forever. And I don't say that. I'm not trying to, yuck your yum, as my wife would say. I'm not trying to rain on your parade. But like life ebbs and flows. It does, right? If things are really, really hard right now, at home with your family, at work with your team, in life with your health, it's not going to be like this forever. I mean, look, we don't know what happens not only tomorrow and next week and next month, but an hour from now. So life is it's inherently uncertain. That said, though, think of all the things that you have been through in your life. Think of all what you've been through in the last 2+ years with COVID. There's no way any of us thought we could get through something like this. And we're not all the way through it yet, clearly. But like one of the exercises that I sometimes will do, hey, Ray, good to see you, that I'll sometimes do with myself, and I've done over the years with people that I've coached, is to take inventory of some of the worst things that have ever happened to us or that we've ever been through. Not to wallow in it, or feel sorry for ourselves or re-traumatize ourselves, not at all, but to remember, I've gone through some pretty big and gnarly things. And I've made it. I figured it out. Yeah, maybe battered and bruised and maybe painful, and maybe I've picked up some scars along the way, as we all have. But I've figured out some stuff. I've navigated through some things. I've learned, I've changed, I've evolved, I've healed, I've grown. And at the time, some of those things, whether it was a job loss or a heartbreak or an illness or a loss of some kind that we thought, I'm never going to get over this. Right, Ray? That's how we build experience. That's how we gain wisdom. So again, right now, the hard part about right now, look, all of our power is in the present moment, always. It's not in the past. It's not in the future. It's right now. The challenge of right now is we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know how this plays out. You're welcome, Karen. Thanks for joining. So can we bring that awareness? Oh, remember a year ago, remember 5 years ago, remember 10 years ago when that thing happened that freaked me out and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm never going to get through this or get over it. And I did. Maybe that's true right now too. Because you know what? Most likely it is. So be real about how we feel. Don't overreact is the second thing. The third thing is remembering this too shall pass. Right, Mary? And there's often, not only will we get through it, but there's a potential for transformation. There's a potential for growth, for something even more that we didn't even know. And part of what Mary's talking about on LinkedIn, or what Karen and Ray are talking about on Facebook, as I'm reading the comments there, and I appreciate you joining live, is the fourth thing, which is, can we bring a sense of mindfulness to what we're experiencing? Now, again, mindfulness isn't about necessarily being super calm and peaceful. And that's part of it. But it's mindful, being real, being aware, being conscious, being present. So some of my own mindfulness practices are meditation, journaling, walking out in nature or being outside, breathing, looking out the window, even talking with someone that I love or sharing with you. That mindfulness practices are, can I bring myself into the present moment so that I can feel what I'm feeling, experience this, but not overreact. Remember, it'll pass. Look for, as Mary's talking about, the opportunity for transformation, for resiliency, for strength, just being aware. There's a question I remember years ago in a session I was having with a counselor I was working with. She said, what if when you started to go down those paths of negativity, of self judgment and self ridicule, which is one of the places I can get stuck, is being really hard on myself and beating myself up. What if instead of believing all of that noise in your head, you just asked yourself, oh, isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? I had that thought. Isn't that interesting? I had that concern. Isn't that interesting? I'm now in some fear story about all the terrible things that could happen. So getting curious, curiosity is a way to bring us into the present moment, bring us into mindfulness. And then the final thing, the fifth and final thing I want to remind you and me and all of us is, can we be kind to ourselves? Self-kindness, right? Self-compassion. Easier said than done. You know, one of the books I wrote, Nothing Changes Until You Do. It's right behind me there, wherever that is, up there, the green one. It's all about self-compassion. Something that I've studied and looked at and written about and inquired into quite a bit. Something that I have struggled with throughout my life, at times more, at times less, but being kind to ourselves, being compassionate with ourselves. Another great Brene Brown quote, she says, talk to yourself as if you're talking to someone who you really love. Here's a great technique. If you're sitting somewhere, you know, you're not moving around, or where you can do this and it's safe, just right now, put your hands on your heart, both of them. Take a few deep breaths. This is actually physiologically will calm your nervous system, lower your cortisol, bring you into the present moment. It's a mindfulness practice, but it's also a self-compassion practice. I often will do this and say, it's going to be okay, Mike. Or, I love you, Mike. Or, you got this, or whatever. I mean, some way. I know it sounds corny and cheesy. I get that, right? But it's a reminder. I got you. I got you. You got yourself. We have ourselves. Not that we're isolated on an island all by ourselves. We have people who we love. We have others around us. We have higher powers we can tap into, but tapping into our own power, our own compassion, kindness, empathy, even love and appreciation for ourselves, super important. The most important relationship, human relationship, that we all have is the one with ourselves. And we don't spend a lot of time nurturing that relationship. And we're the common denominator in every single situation, in all the stress and challenge, in all of the goals and dreams and aspirations, in all of the wonderfulness of life. We're there. So the more we make peace with ourselves, the more grounded and peaceful we can be in any situation, every situation. So the 5 things: be real with how you feel. Number 1. Number 2, don't overreact. Easier said than done, right? Number 3 is, remember, this too shall pass. Number 4 is bringing forth that sense of mindfulness, those practices of mindfulness. And then number 5 is being kind to ourselves, compassionate with ourselves. So practicing those in any and every way that you can. I know that it has been challenging and difficult and continues to be for so many of us. And even not, if not for us personally, for people around us. And we're feeling that we continue to, and we keep showing up. Here we are. Here you are. Here I am. So bravo to you. I wish you all the best. I will come back here and do another live video in another week or two. Let me know if there's any topics or things you want me to discuss or questions that you have, and feel free to stay engaged and connected with me. Best way to do that is here on social or through our website, which is mike-robbins.com. See you soon.